We're going to top it off today with KVH and trends in satellite communications. Steve Griffin comes to us with more than a decade in the satellite industry. He offers a tremendous breadth of knowledge and field experience in satellite communications and highly advanced IT solutions for the super yacht market. As part of KVH's design and launch team, Steve helped establish mini VSAT broadband service and is #1 VSAT solution for maritime applications globally. In addition, Steve has been a part of the KVH Maritime Sales Management and Technical Training Team in Southern Florida for many years, belonging to numerous broker, captain, and maritime associations throughout the industry. He's previously spoken on satellite technology and innovation panels at Oilcom, Offshore Communications, Pacific Marine Expo, International Workboat Show, and the Thrain & Thrain Partner Conference for the oil and gas industry. Satellite communications is not just for super yachts these days. It's for everybody from small ones to big ones. Come on up and tell us all about it, Steve.
You and cocktails is a brief presentation that I'm going to go through here real quick, so no pressure. What I think is really interesting, and I'm going to dive into it, is that I think there's an element of every presentation, potentially not with the steel and aluminum, but every other presentation, one way or another, talked about a capability that could involve an IP connection. And I think it's interesting that, and that's where IP, internet has evolved these days. So I think it's really, really neat seeing how that all works out. So what is satellite communications? There's a, see right there? Those little tiny domes up there, sometimes people wonder what they are, why they're there, what they're doing. You get a closer look at, a little bit closer up to kind of see where they go. Inside those domes, sometimes they're empty, and they just want them to match, and we all know why they need to match. But normally they have these little robotic antennas that come in all shapes and sizes and colors. And what they do is, if you consider, if anybody has DirecTV or Dish Network at your house, you have a dish that's bolted to your house, and if your house were to ever shake or move, you wouldn't be able to watch your programming anymore because those dishes are pointed at a very, very, very specific spot in space at a satellite that's 23,000 miles away. These, what they'll do is that while you're in motion, pitching and rolling on a boat, these antennas are constantly tracking the satellite. So, I mean, they truly are little robots inside those domes up there. When you take a look at, an effective SATCOM strategy, there's increasing options, there's complexity involved, and there's suppliers. So I thought I'd go back in time a little bit about where satellite communications has evolved and ultimately where it's going to. 10 years ago, when I started with KVH, Inmarsat was pretty much on every yacht, their old fleet service, or there were, 2-point-something meter VSAT antennas that were extremely expensive, very, very hard to maintenance and support, and they were really for your Larry Allisons of the world who has a 300-something foot yacht, right, with a very, very complex network. So it was slow speeds and high cost or huge antennas with, fairly poor reliability. And with that also, the experience. Even 10 years ago, we had experiences about internet that isn't a reality on yachts. Now, VSAT is a dominant new service, but has growing pains. So first and foremost, there's multiple service providers out there that are constantly trying to sell communication solutions to yachts and floating boats all over the world. And some are financially healthy and are big companies. Some of them are smaller and maybe offer kind of a smaller region or whatnot. There's some of the growing pains is you have quote unquote solutions. We don't sell KVH and other VSAT providers, they don't really sell antennas anymore. They're not selling rate plans. What they should be doing is delivering a solution, to a problem. So every time somebody needs satellite communications, there's a problem. They need connectivity. They need to run their business. They need to be able to have 20 different tablets doing different things so that the kids are happy. There's, in the business has been, lack of transparency. Is something unlimited? Is it not unlimited? What are the expected speeds? Are you going to get those speeds? As well as, the quality and the reliability can vary among providers, and that's part of, really doing, really doing a good job, searching out, what some of the possible vendors that you may work with. And then there's, service and support challenges for anybody that's in the satellite communications world. Sometimes reaching an oil and gas vessel off the coast of Angola can be sometimes difficult. And, we live in an area where passing the buck is sometimes too easy. It could be the internet provider's fault. It could be you need a software upgrade. It could be the antenna's fault. It could be the modem's fault. So sometimes you see kind of a lot of pointing back and forth. So something where the future's coming, and is coming soon, are high throughput satellites. So yourselves and your customers are going to start hearing about companies launching these new services that are going to give, anywhere between, 100 to 600% increase in speeds. But not necessarily making it more expensive. So technology's changing as always. Like I said, it can provide 2 times and 100% throughput the conventional satellites, and that's talking about the fastest suppliers now. A lot of boats don't even have that on board their boats yet, so it's even more faster. They're talking about, it's overlapping spots. So when you have spot beams versus a wide beam, that spot beam can actually work in your favor. Because it's going to have a kind of a higher ERP, higher G over T. It's going to be more powerful. It's going to be more focused on that particular area. Some of the examples that are out there, Inmarsat, as a lot of you have probably heard of, and some of your customers may use Inmarsat. They have a Ka-band network that they're deploying. There's a satellite in Northern Europe that's also a Ka-band satellite. And then there's Intelsat 1 Flex, which is kind of more focused on, especially early on this part of the world. So there's a lot happening in the back end to make satellite communications even better than it has been. And most HTS operators are providing managed service for mobility. So what it is it's kind of a different way to do it. And what's great is, these big satellite operators understand the demand for mobility and the importance of mobility more than ever. Whether you're dealing with airplanes, whether you're dealing with vehicles, whether you're dealing with yachts, it's a very, very, very common thing. So when you talk about the challenge, right? So you have various things that you need to consider, and ultimately your service provider should deliver. So you need to be able to optimize who can do what, where, and when. So if the captain's on board, or if the owner, is flying in and coming on board, well, somebody on that boat should be able to disable the MAC addresses of all the crew so that they're not taking up bandwidth, and then enable the captain's devices, the owner's devices, so that they're getting all the bandwidth at that time. There's a number of different ways to manage that, but it's possible. So when you think about satellite communications, or any type of communications, even at your house, that pipe of bandwidth is like a garden hose, and you can only push so much through it. So if you have a garden hose this small, you're only going to be able to push a certain amount of water through it, whereas if you have a garden hose this big, you can push a lot more. So the bigger the pipe, obviously makes you think that it's going to be faster, but it could be a pipe this big, and if you have a bunch of people with tablets and doing updates and uploading a bunch of pictures they just took from a little excursion onto an island and downloading it up to their iCloud, all that stuff needs to be managed. I'll go into some of these buzzwords in a couple minutes, but your supplier needs to understand and support big data and the Internet of Things. Obviously staying within the budget, but ultimately making sure that it's a success for everybody at sea, as well as everybody on shore. And I'm going to get into that because it plays a role in a lot of what you people talked about today. So what are some of the expectations, and how connectivity is changing? People want to use the phone more than ever. They want to watch sporting events, and if you can't get live TV, are you going to try to stream these sporting events? We've all heard of YouTube, and we understand how powerful that is and how easy it is to go and find a video. But when you're watching that video, it's taking up bandwidth. So if I'm watching a YouTube video taking up all the bandwidth on the yacht, well, guess what? The owner's not going to be too happy when he or she's trying to run his or her company, right? Then you have one of my favorites, the old software iOS updates. That's a 204 megabyte update that if you were to do that on satellite, you're going to shut down connectivity on everybody else's devices on board. And that's not a good thing. And again, all this stuff can be managed and controlled, but what I'm trying to get across here is the expectation of internet on a boat in the middle of the Caribbean versus a T1 or a T2 line at the offices that a lot of us work at. Then you have, routing and getting updated charts. A lot of times you need to download those updated charts or weather forecasts, whatever it may be. And then you have social media, and keeping in touch. I mean, social media is driving how all of us behave, and we see it. When we look at, the top 10 or 20 protocols that are used globally, Facebook, every other type of social media mechanism that you can think of, or avenue, I should say, and then even training. You can do a lot of training on board a vessel, on board a yacht as well, especially if it's when maybe the owner's off the boat, there's not a charter. It's a good time for training to potentially happen, and then just the demand for content. Whether it's podcasts, whether it's watching movies, whether it's watching the news, whether it's downloading and getting better weather charts, whatever it may be, it's content, and there's a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous demand. Think about Netflix. Everybody wants to be able to go onto Netflix, and they're not thinking that satellite 23,000 miles away is not going to deliver the same experience that is if you're at your house. And what's important is knowing what your vessel's, what the yacht's doing, right? So it's kind of hard to read it, but in order of the top protocols found. So I always think it's interesting that you have a boat that is literally doing this. Let's call this a sport fish boat. They're out there, they're chasing, they're hitting it hard off of Costa Rica. But at the same time, though, they're using this much Google, this much Facebook, this much, I think this is Instagram, iTunes. You take a look at all of that usage right there, and it's like, well, did you need to use that right now, or could you have waited maybe until you got into the marina, connected to a Wi-Fi, and been able to then do it then, right? And part of this, again, is managing it, that there's a good chance this could have been crew that were doing this. And do the crew really need to be doing all this stuff? Does it make sense? But it's having these discussions. And what we've learned over the years is that it's truly a consultative sale. It's like walking into an enterprise office and asking how many computers, how much do you need? Do you need it to be peaked at certain times? All of this has to happen on a yacht. It's quite honest, most yachts are better designed and much more luxurious than any office you're ever going to go into. When you just take a look at, when you're talking about expectations and on these lovely phones that we all carry, is that it's Ericsson put this together, that they're expecting 13 times growth in mobile video traffic between 2013 and 2019. That could be a number of different things. That could be everything from, from streaming. That could using FaceTime to downloading videos to. It could be the captain or the ETO needs to figure out how to go fix something, and they go and watch a 30-minute video on how to go and do something, and that's very, very common. But as you can see, as you can imagine, satellite, no matter how many satellites you launch, no matter how fast you launch them, you got to understand the reality that it may not keep up with this drastic curve right here. But there's a lot of stuff that's happening down the road that hopefully will do a good job of keeping up with it. But I always think this is interesting because I'm a consumer of internet. And I don't really think about how I use it. I don't think about where I use it. I don't think about a lot of these different things. Most of us don't. But it's interesting, when somebody says, God, our speeds are really, really slow, and we go and say, well, 70% of your usage last month was iCloud. Meaning that somebody went and took a bunch of pictures, and the second their phone hit a wireless connection, bam. There goes 20, 30, 40 gigabytes like that. And again, you're shutting down all communications on board the vessel at that point. You're filling the garden hose to the max. So we've all heard of big data. We've all heard the Internet of Things. They're kind of buzzwords. They're misleading in really what they are. Big data is not a technology. It's not a technique, or initiative. It's just a trend across many areas of business and technology, and it comes along with the Internet of Things. So it's not necessarily big data at once. It's all this small little data going back and forth. All these servers that are on board these boats that need to constantly be talking back and forth, pinging, hey, are you there? Yes, I'm there. Hey, are you there? Yes, I'm there. A lot of that stuff adds up, and then I'm going to get a little more into this in a moment. So as we talked about with showing YouTube and some more of the recreational reasons why internet connectivity is important, well, we have a lot of the things that we talked about today. So, with AME Solutions and talking about, and talking about really what they try to strive to be able to do, well, that's all stored on board the boat, whether it's a bus type of setup, it's an NMEA 2000 hookup, whatever it may be. But you want to get that stuff back to shore. People back to shore really, really want to see that stuff. It could be your management company. It could be the broker. It could be a number of different things. You look at Caterpillar, for example, right? So you have, let's say, a Caterpillar engine. Imagine if Caterpillar was able to know at any point in time via a portal how fast you're running the boat, how hard you're running the boat, how is it working, are you burning more fuel than typically? Because when they're selling propulsion, when somebody's selling guaranteed propulsion for a 5-year period, it costs a lot of money for that company to back that up. For them to be able to have insight into how their engines are performing remotely is ultimately going to not only make the customer experience that much better because it's preventative maintenance already happening, but it's not going to be that, okay, now the thing's broken and we got to spend tens of thousands of dollars to go and fix it. So a lot of this is very, very, very important. Jemico, I think, who was the first or second speaker, I thought he did a fantastic job of laying out how everything on board a vessel can be ultimately connected back together on board the boat, so that you have these beautiful displays on the dashboard and all these other types of things. But you also think about too that, well, let's say nobody's on board the boat, right? And all of a sudden an alert or a text message goes to your phone saying the AC just got turned off, or you lost power. Guess what? All the ice is melting now. And then you talk about ventilation, right? So when the gentleman who was talking about ventilation, think about it if all of a sudden your ventilation system just stopped working and nobody was on board the boat for a week. That's not going to be pretty pleasing when you walk on that boat if that's not happening. And the idea here is there are so many things on board boats now that have sensors that can be collected. But then it's what do you do with that data? So I look at it like this, right? So I like the cycle. Don't do it as much as I wish I could. But I have one of those apps that I use that helps me know, okay, logging, okay, this is what I ran this day, this day, this day, this day. You can break it down by aerobic, fitness, all these different types of things. You can go back and look at archives of anything from heart rate and all these different types of things. Well, what about the importance of that, knowing what's going on with that, maybe that engine valve back home? What if the management company could have insight into these types of things? One of the things that, not to pitch KVH, there's a lot of companies out there that offer this. Meritron's an example of this. But we put together what's called KVH Watch. So as you can see, that screenshot, it's going to probably be kind of hard to see from far away. But this particular vessel, we're collecting data from over 1,000 sensors on that boat. We're not in the vessel monitoring business, but we're in the business of that data is already being collected. It's just getting it off the ship and onto a cloud in a very, very, very efficient manner. Again, it takes connectivity to be able to do that. But when you have, in this case, again, it's commercial, but when you have, 80 ships going all around the world, the management, and they're based off of a charter, which probably had a set gas price or something like that. The management company, if they see a boat that is going 2,000 RPMs faster than they should be, or there's heavy seas coming up and whatnot, they can monitor fuel usage. They can monitor this. They can monitor that. Costco could go to the company whose boats they're using to ship stuff all around the world, and the charter could call up and tell the captain, hey, you need to get there 3 hours earlier, and the captain just hits the throttle and starts going faster. Costco's not going to pay for that difference in the fuel that they just ran. So there's a number of different reasons for wanting to be able to have everything from engine room temperatures, the tank levels on 22 different fuel tanks. So you can take some of this and then bring it back into the world of yachting, but this is what the Internet of Things is all about. Small pieces of data, but they add up to a lot, and it's very, very it's the future. It's absolutely the future to have these type of capabilities. And again, like I've always said, imagine that a engine manufacturer knew that you had a connective system on there, knew that you had a service like a Watch or like a Maritron, and then they could see all their customers' engines and seeing how they're performing. That makes everybody's life in this room better. I can assure you that. Why do speeds seem slow? Oh, my speeds seem slow. They're probably going to complain to the broker, the management company, to their friends, to other captains. Really what it is the total bandwidth delivered divided by the number of active devices. So you could have a 1 megabit per second connection, which is pretty fast over satellite, but if you got 10 devices using it at the same time, let's say they're all using it equally, what you're really doing is only getting 128 kilobit per second speed. That is very, 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 very slow. That's kind of back to what was going on back in the 1990s that we called dial-up connection. So it's very important that those devices are managed. Who has access, when they have access, how much access, is it maybe only a certain amount of access a day, but all this is manageable, and it's very, very important to understand that it is possible. Speed versus need. So unlimited VSAT plans, they're really not a reality. Actual capacity is going to be constrained to some extent. It's designed to limit the ship's network access to protect the network. Most providers control your usage, not you. So they just try to throttle your bandwidth and try to figure a way to do it without having the question of, well, what do you want to accomplish? Let's sit down and have an open discussion about what you want to accomplish on the yacht. What's the owner like? How many charters, did you do last year, to give a sense of when are you going to need your speeds boosted up versus your speeds boosted down? And as I said, capacity doesn't equal speed. It actually equals, bandwidth, or equals bandwidth used over time. And what does this mean? Even a slow, steady trickle of a little bit of data can add up. And it's very important that you manage all aspects of that. Or not you, but the vessel is. What's a megabyte? When I started with KVH 10 years ago, and we were into the satellite communications gig, and we were billing by, I think, the megabit at that time, the big thing I learned is that nobody knows what a megabyte looks like. I've never seen a megabyte before. I don't know about any of you. I've never seen one. I don't know what it smells like. I don't know what color it is. I don't know the shape of it. But megabytes drive all of our world. We consume them every day. So you look like a 4-minute song versus a WhatsApp message on iOS, a 9-hour audio book, a 2-hour HD movie if you were to go to download it. And you got the comparisons of what you can do over LTE versus some older technology versus a VSAT solution with 4 megabits per second down. So, when you take a look at how big some of these things are, then you start to think about the fact that, wow, if we're just going to allow this stuff to happen all the time, we're going to feel like our speeds are always slow, and we're going to use 1/4 of a terabyte of data a month. So, and so some of the things that you want to ask your experts, and when I say experts, I mean, you want to talk to the people that you see, that you network with, that are in the satellite communications world. I talk to a lot of customers that may never get my product. My product may not be the right one for them, and we've had that suggestion, but, I'm going to let them know this competitor of mine, they target a different market, they may be better off for you. But talk to people who know satellite and who understand satellite, because it's very, very important that you want to understand what's the minimum requirement. What's the minimum that you're going to need for this connectivity on your yacht to be successful, and it varies by every single owner, obviously. And then you got to take into consideration, what kind of data are you transmitting? What do you want it to look like? Do you always want to do it on satellite? KVH solutions allow that if you have a Wi-Fi cellular modem built in, that could always be the primary, and the second that that's no longer available, then it'll go over to the VSAT. You're enjoying faster speeds, obviously, on like an LTE network, for example. But then also you want to think of not right now, but you also want to think 2, 3, 4 years down the road, because you want to partner with a company that's going to be there 2, 3, 4 years down the road, is going to have the ability to constantly invest in more capacity, new satellites, whatever it may be, and it's a planning out process. We're already looking at, particular capabilities for 2020, but we've been in this game for a long time, and we have the resources to be able to go and do that. So a couple of things to take into consideration: cost and consumption, and just understanding, is there a demand for getting sensors off? Is there crew access? Is there video? Is there more? The lifetime cost of ownership, support needs, warranty expectations, all these different types of things. These are discussions that, that your customers should be having with their service provider. Big data. Do you understand what it is? Is big data important for you to run your operation, to run your business, whatever it may be? And is your SATCOM selection going to keep your data and network secure? So we've all heard about cybersecurity and a lot of the efforts that are in place to make everybody's information more, I guess just say more safe. So companies like KVH will put advanced firewall, antivirus, and a lot of protection into the teleports on the land that point up at the satellites to ensure that this type of stuff is encrypted and protected, and that these very, very wealthy owners don't have to worry about those type of threats. And then voice services, voice calls are often the most effective means of communications. I always think it's funny that people try to go back and forth and argue via email, and you just pick up the phone and probably make it better. But is prepaid calling something that the crew might be interested in? Split billing, so you could have one antenna, one modem, but actually 2 different rate plans on it. So maybe the crew are on one rate plan, the owner or the charter guests on a bigger, faster rate plan that maybe you turn on and off, and they don't compete against each other. Again, these things are things that are here now that we could do. And prioritizing different things, right? So when we talk about what is the goal of the connectivity on board, it could very much be that we want voice to be more important than anything else. We want the owner to always have more, always win the internet battle with the crew or the charter guests or whatnot. So there's a lot of ways that you want to break it through. So you want to think about a new model of, dad delivered at the maximum speed, making it available at every price point and package for every customer. Everybody needs connectivity. It's just a matter of how often are they outside cellular service, and what do they need to accomplish when they are in that particular thing. No protocol and application restrictions. Not blocking video, not blocking Skype, giving you a whole wide open pipe. Complete transparency in data use. Ensure easy tools to permit and manage data use. So really, I'm going to walk away with 4 keys I feel to a successful SATCOM strategy. first survey the needs of the stakeholders. What are the must-haves as well as the risks? We published a white paper that went through a lot of some of these checklists and things to consider, and it's been very well received. Eliminate the pass the buck scenario. So, and again, I'm not selling our solution, but our solution, it's all in one box. It's all board, based management, and we own the whole entire thing. And that other rack, which some of you have maybe seen before, there's so many different devices in there that are from so many different companies that you're going to see that finger pointing happen. So, ask that question. Have your customers ask that question. If something doesn't work, whose fault is it? Our answer is KVH. We manufacture the antennas, we provide the service, we contract the bandwidth. So if something breaks, it's my fault. And we're willing to take on that responsibility. 3, demand some sort of secure, flexible, and transparent data and network management options. So we have something called My KVH. Again, my competition has all the same things. So this is, something you should demand of them. But it gives you an idea of where you're at to usage that month. And it gives you the ability to set alerts so that if your data usage is 75%, you'll get a text message just like you do with your cell phone providers. And then, I think most important is protect your investment now and in the future. Don't only ask for what your provider is going to be able to give you now, but also ask them, what are they going to be able to give you in the future? What's coming out in the near future? Do I buy now? Do I wait? If you're an ethical company and an ethical service provider, you want that customer to be happy. And if it doesn't mean selling something now, but 6 months down the road, they're going to be happy. That's what it's all about. So. Are there any questions? Sir.
Right here in the yellow.
At one point,
Hang on one second. Dined's bringing you a microphone. Because Shay wasn't quick enough.
speak loud enough. At one point, I saw 4 megabits per second. Is that the maximum?
For us, that's the maximum on one of our products right now. And with the new HTS stuff that we spoke about, you can expect 10 megabits per second.
Thank you.
As kind of a normal package. There's capabilities where if the yacht wants to pay enough, there's ways to slice and dice segment for them to get, bigger packages, be customizable. That's the name of the game. You can't expect a rate sheet that's going to be sitting at a KVH booth at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show to service every customer, right? So as we get into more and more of these yachts and big yachts that have big IT demands and connectivity needs, well, that person's probably going to need more bandwidth speed. So a lot of this business ends up being customizable, and that's good because at the end of the day, the consumer wins out, the owner wins out, the charter guest wins out. Everybody wins out when they have a good experience.
Excellent. One more, Jim.
Yeah.
You just got to share. Oh. Shay's on it.
My question is there any upcoming technological breakthroughs that could change the game?
Yeah.
And that's important because it's getting common now for fiber optics, even into a home, certainly into an office, which is given gigabytes.
Yeah.
So as people get used to that, the gap going to get huge.
Right, yeah. So, I'd love to be able to tell you that chart I showed with how much data consumption is increasing on mobile devices. To keep up with that is very, very difficult because I don't even know if that's true. We saw with our average customer back in 2008, they were using probably 2-3 gigabytes a month. Now the average customer is using 35, 37 gigabytes a month. It's just going to completely go up. But that being said, though, I mentioned the high throughput satellite capabilities. I can't say anything right now because KVH is a publicly traded company, but I would suggest that everybody be on the lookout for a press release in the next coming weeks talking about what we're doing. So yes, there's a lot between now and the end of the year, not just from KVH, that you're going to see in this market that's going to be all about faster speeds, better management, all of the above. So it should be a fun back half of the summer for those who are looking for the next generation of communications.
Awesome. Steve, thank you very much.
Great.
Great presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Well, I think we've had a good day. We've learned a lot of